Hey, welcome to Life After Nursing School. I'm your host, Caroline Dana, aka Nurse Coach Caroline, and I'm here to help you, the new nurse, thrive in your career. As a former nurse recruiter, nurse manager, and now your personal new nurse career coach, I'm obsessed with making sure you don't just survive your first couple of years at the bedside. I want you to absolutely rock them. From the challenges to the triumphs, I'll be right here with you, giving you the real-world advice and support that you need to shine. Whether you're in nursing school getting ready for life after, or you're already out there in nurse life feeling overwhelmed or even questioning your confidence, I've got your back. I'll be sharing tips, tricks, resources, and strategies that are just for you. We'll dive into everything from landing that dream nursing job to slaying imposter syndrome, and most importantly, how to keep that spark alive and stay the vibrant and amazing nurse that you are. So if you're ready to tackle the things nursing school did not cover, like how to build a career, trust yourself, and keep your passion strong, then get comfortable because we are about to dive in and make nurse life the best life. Today's episode is going to be focusing on how to avoid being the nurse with their hair on fire. Now, I know some of you might be like, what? What does that even mean to be the nurse with their hair on fire? If you haven't heard of this expression, don't worry. You've likely been around this type of nurse either in clinical or while working as a nurse or even in healthcare in some sort of role. The nurse with their hair on fire is that nurse that is constantly spinning and spiraling. They are the main character in the nursing nightmare known as Overwhlem. This nurse is often in a fight or flight state, frustrated and in a victim powerless mindset, and can be often angry. This nurse can be found huffing and puffing, mumbling under their breath, complaining and acting with urgency, yet getting nothing done. If you've ever worked alongside this type of nurse, you can feel their stress. It's a palpable energy that just leaves you feeling like your own blood pressure is on the rise. Yes, we've all had these shifts where crap hits the fan or nothing seems to go our way, or days where we just feel like every time we turn around, we're putting out a new fire. I'm not talking about those crappy shifts. Unfortunately, it is normal to have them from time to time, but what I'm talking about and referring to in this episode are strategies to help the nurse that it constantly finds themselves within these crappy, frustrating shifts. Many times, the same nurses seem to be the ones in Overwhlem over and over again. They are repeat offenders or the unit's unofficial nurse with their hair on fire. If this is you, then this episode is perfect for you. If you are not sure if you are the one with the unofficial title holder for the unit's very own nurse with their hair on fire, but want to help yourself avoid overwhelm and lean into a more structured and supportive workflow, then this episode is for you. I also want to emphasize that being a nurse is incredibly challenging, and our health system seems to be adding more and more to our workload every day. When I first started as a nurse 12 years ago, there were a few nurses operating with quote unquote their hair on fire. Unfortunately, now I feel like it's a much more common occurrence, and I want to help you get out of that state of overwhelm. What you will quickly learn in nursing, if you have not already, is that most things that happen during our shift are outside of our control. For instance, we may find that our patients are sicker than we anticipated, or we have an unfair assignment that day, or our patient arrives from the ER up to the unit at the worst time. We may be working in poor staffing conditions, or our patients are not collaborative. We may have to float off our home unit to another less familiar area, or we find that we don't have the resources needed to really do a good job that day. The list goes on and on. Nursing is a challenging profession and it is multifaceted. But there are things we can control to set ourselves up for a smooth shift, and I want to focus on those things. First, let's talk about the state of overwhelm. Being in a state of overwhelm refers to feeling emotionally and mentally burdened by an excessive amount of stress or demands, and often to the point where an individual struggles to cope or manage effectively. Hence why the nurse with her hair on fire is spinning in circles and yet getting nothing done. Overwhelm can affect an individual's ability to think clearly, focus, or perform a basic task. It's important to understand that overwhelm isn't just a mental state, but one that impacts both the mind and the body. Psychological effects of overwhelm include impaired focus and concentration, increased anxiety and worry, decision paralysis, decreased self esteem and self worth, emotional exhaustion, and a loss of a sense of control. Physical manifestations of overwhelm are increased heart rate, muscle tension and pain, poor digestive function like nausea and abdominal pain, sleep disturbances, fatigue, and weakened immune system. It is important to note that overwhelm is often the precursor to burnout. The more we find ourselves working at the bedside in a state of overwhelm or with our hair on fire, the more likely we will eventually find ourselves in the dark abyss of burnout. Overwhelm leads to burnout when it persists over time without sufficient relief or recovery. The ongoing stress depletes both emotional and physical energy, diminishes motivation, and leads to a sense of hopelessness. Recognizing the signs early and implementing strategies for self care and stress management is essential to prevent burnout from occurring. I want to share a framework for overwhelm created by Mel Robbins and how we can apply it to our 12-hour shift. Mel Robbins is a New York Times bestselling author, motivational speaker, and media company CEO. She is known for the 5-second rule, which is a tangible practice to help you take action, as well as her famous TED Talk titled How to Stop Screwing Yourself Over. She is widely known for her tips on self-discovery and growth, which are things I love to learn about. So naturally, Mel Robbins is one of my favorite people to learn from. Mel Robbins teaches a few concepts related to overwhelm in the Mel Robbins podcast. Her episode that I want to refer to here is called Practical Proven Tools I Use When I Feel Overwhelmed. She begins by explaining there are two types of overwhelm that exist. The first is called legitimate overwhelm. This type of overwhelm is caused by a season of life or a life circumstance, for example, in the thick of nursing school or going through a divorce, or you maybe have to be a full-time caregiver for a loved one. In these seasons of legitimate overwhelm, it's important to remember that life is a marathon, not a sprint, and the key to surviving is self-care and self-love. If you are in legitimate overwhelm, give yourself grace during this life chapter. Set some boundaries and protect your peace. This may mean limiting your social engagements because you are working long days, and maybe even means saying no more often than you say yes. When this season of life passes, your capacity to take on more will increase and you will resurface. This season of life is about putting yourself first and being there for yourself. You need to prioritize rest and recharging because, again, life is a marathon. It's not a sprint, and we need to maintain stamina to make it through. If you are experiencing this type of life overwhelm, it's important to lean into stress relieving activities like mindfulness, exercise, and meditation. Other self-care components that can help you in the season of life is practicing good sleep hygiene, as well as making sure you're getting enough appropriate nutrition and hydration. This season of life is about meeting your basic needs in order to keep stamina as we progress in this life marathon. However, the first type of overwhelm isn't the one that I want to address in this episode. I am leaning way into the second type, and that is labeled by Mel as lifestyle overwhelm. This is when all of a sudden your whole life feels overwhelming. You may feel like you've overcommitted or you have to-do lists everywhere. You might have a schedule that's bursting at the seams and there just doesn't seem to be enough time for you, and therefore you are at the bottom of the list. This type of overwhelm is situational, and we often find ourselves guilty of fueling the overwhelming fire within us, creating our own chaos. This overwhelm is the type we find ourselves experiencing when we are at the bedside. Mel Robbins explains that when we are feeling overwhelmed with our current situation or surroundings, it's important to recognize it and identify the feeling or experience as overwhelm. When we find ourselves on the unit and in overwhelm, we are often busy blaming others for our situation. For example, maybe we're blaming the doctor for putting in Q2-hour pain medication, or we're blaming the ER for transferring a patient to the floor right as we were about to grab a quick lunch, or we are blaming the charge nurse for giving us the next admission, or maybe we are blaming all of these people at the same time. In these circumstances, blaming others will just fuel resentment and anger. It is not productive. What we are experiencing in those moments are feelings of overwhelm, and we need to identify that. Once we recognize that that is what we are feeling, Mel explains we can then move into the next step where we stop lying to ourselves. She says the lie that she is referring to here is the belief that everything is important. Everything is in fact not important. And as nurses, we also tend to want to be able to do all the things for our patients and deliver the best care possible. So in order to be more strategic in what tasks need to be top priority, we need to accept the realization that not all of our tasks are important, or at least in this moment in time. Mel Robbins goes on to explain that if we can identify the state of overwhelm that we are in and stop buying into the belief that every single thing is important, the next best step is to complete a brain dump. This is where the tangible and actionable steps come into play. I want to add here that if you go in the show notes, you will find the RN Shift Clarity tool. And that is a tool that I've created that involves the brain dump and a few other tangible action items that she mentioned. So if this is something you want, head to the show notes and download it. It's absolutely free. All right, let's get back into it. So Mel recommends taking a blank piece of paper, grabbing a pen or pencil, and proceeding to write down everything. And by everything, I'm referring to all the tasks that need to get done, thoughts taking up space in your head, and anything else on your mind. Dump it all on that sheet of paper. She even suggests, if you want, you can put a line down the center and you can put maybe important or time sensitive things on the left, and you can put everything else on the right. The key here is to get it down on paper so you can be strategic in your plan of action moving forward. The act of moving tasks and things from our minds to a piece of paper acts as a mental release. You may even feel lighter just by doing this one step. Now let's jump into an example. You get report on your 5-patient assignment for the day. You are immediately overwhelmed because your assignment is heavy. Take out a blank piece of paper and write down everything on your mind. On one side, write down time sensitive tasks, and these tasks may be things like your scheduled medications, blood sugar checks, time sensitive labs, your head to toe assessments, admission documentation, time sensitive interventions, etc. On the other side of your paper, compile a list of all your other tasks. These tasks are typically not time sensitive, but they are still important. Maybe discharge instructions, patient education, documenting assessments, care plans, checking I's and O's, dressing changes, providing family with updates, etc. Managing all of these tasks in your head and keeping a never-ending to-do list is heavy and stressful and increases the feeling of overwhelm, especially with every new item that you need to add to that list. Okay, brain dump step number 2. Now that you have everything written down on a piece of paper, Mel Robbins explains that you are going to take a highlighter and highlight the most important and time-sensitive tasks. Since we are applying this to a 12-hour shift, we are highlighting the items that are time sensitive and must be done by a nurse. We are highlighting things that cannot be delegated. This is what is actually important, and this is how we stop the lie that everything is important and must be done as soon as possible. After the brain dump is complete and you've highlighted time sensitive tasks, Mel goes on to explain the rule of 3. According to Mel, you must pick your top 3 priorities and focus on accomplishing those for that day. Pick the top 3 important things that need to be done by you as the primary nurse. So given our previously mentioned scenario, maybe our top 3 most important things for that day are administering scheduled morning medications, completing head-to-toe assessments on all of our patients, and completing admission documentation on our newest patient. As these tasks are completed, we can move on to another top 3, which is the act of reprioritizing. Do not let your anxiety increase because of the things that are not on your top 3. There is no need to worry about the patient's aunt who keeps calling for an update, or the patient who is up for discharge, or the social worker who is looking to connect with you about resources for your patient that they may need post-discharge. If these are not your top 3 priorities for the shift at that moment in time, do not give them your time, energy, or attention. I do want to add that you may find your brain dump material gets to a personal level. What I mean is that you may notice as you work through a brain dump session, sometimes the initial things that you write down are often work related, or related to what you think is causing you overwhelm. But as you continue, the things you may find yourself writing down are more personal, like make an appointment for a skin check or do my laundry. I view overwhelm and stress as intricate layers, and the first few layers may be obvious tasks, but as you continue to pull back the layers, the things on your mind that you write down are often more personal and maybe things you didn't even recognize were weighing on your mind in the first place. Once I complete a brain dump session, I find that I then can make two priority lists, one work related and one personal. And I will take it a step further and ask myself to identify what is it that is weighing on me the most. And I usually make that one item a priority to get done. To be honest, oftentimes what is weighing on me most is making an appointment for me or one of my kids, paying a simple bill, or returning a phone call. It is amazing how much lighter I feel when I do those tasks that I've been avoiding for weeks. In addition to figuring out what is actually important when we are feeling overwhelmed, it's also crucial to then get those things done. Many people handle overwhelm with rumination and paralysis. And if this is you, then I'm sure you're thinking, Caroline, how do I get the important things done? Mel Robbins reminds her listeners that the things that matter end up in your schedule. So we need to schedule it. So maybe after the brain dump, you take a few minutes to create a work schedule for the day. Create a schedule and that lists the important things that are due each hour. It may be worth taking 5 to 10 minutes at the start of your shift after getting a report to just plan the day shift or night shift ahead. What do you need to get done? What do you want to get done in that first 1 to 2 hours of your shift? What time sensitive tasks will be due during your shift? When do you want to plan to leave the unit for a lunch break? Outlining your shift ahead will help you be intentional, stay on task, and give you a sense of control. Of course, we know that things happen, nothing goes truly as planned, but the act of outlining your shift can ease anxiety around the day. Creating a schedule and crossing things off as you complete them will give you a sense of accomplishment and, as I mentioned, control. Mel Robbins explains that feeling like we are in control creates a sense of safety within us, and this eases anxiety. Okay, now that we've talked about the act of performing a brain dump, picking our top 3 important time-sensitive tasks, and potentially taking it a step further to jot a quick plan for the shift, I want to shift gears a bit and talk about ways we can set ourselves up to avoid added stress, anxiety, and of course, overwhelm, especially throughout our shift. A great journaling prompt Mel Robbins suggests utilizing is, how can I make this easy? Let's tailor this journal prompt a bit to fit our shift as a nurse. Maybe it can be something like, how can I make my shift easier? For me, when I think about how I can make my shift flow with a bit more ease, a big thing that comes to mind is the simple act of being prepared for the shift. In order to do this, I always keep my work bag stocked. I have a special pocket for my badge, my stethoscope, plenty of pens, my Carmax chapstick. Yes, I absolutely love Carmax chapstick. I have Tylenol and other PRN meds ready in case I encounter one of my fun migraines or even a simple headache. Having a designated bag for work, as well as having it stocked with all of my work essentials, allows me to run out the door in the morning without having to check or pack these items every day. And it makes me feel secure in the fact that I have what I need to work effectively and efficiently. In addition to keeping my work bag well stocked, I also like to go to work prepared with my own packed meals and snacks as well as water. I always pack a meal and a few quick snacks in case my shift is crazy and I have to sort of eat on the go. I also swear by my big Stanley water bottle. There have been many shifts that have been so chaotic that I wasn't able to make it to the calf and therefore I missed my break. And I didn't even have time to stuff a protein bar in my mouth in the break room. Missing meals for me is extremely detrimental to my performance while at work. I've noticed in the past that when I miss my break, I'm irritable, I feel as though I'm dragging, and I'm just not as sharp cognitively. So, in order to make my shift easier and perform at my best, I keep my work bag well stocked with work essentials. I pack my meals and snacks as well as a big water bottle. If you find yourself maybe in both types of overwhelm, legitimate overwhelm caused by the season of life and lifestyle overwhelm, which is caused by surrounding situations, you may want to consider a reset day every week. Let me explain this further. Something that has been extremely impactful in my productivity is the act of being intentional with my time in all aspects of my life. I spend every Sunday prepping for the week ahead, and I take some time to look at the week and physically write in my plan for each day for tasks that I need to get done, whether it's for my business, things that I need to complete for my new nursing students and clinical group, maybe what dinners that I'm having with my family. And I also pencil in things for my kids, whether it's a theme day at school or a sports event that they have to go to, or dance or school function, etc. After this planning session, which honestly takes me less than 20 minutes, I get into action. I complete laundry for my family for the week ahead. I go grocery shopping, and occasionally we even attend church. This acts as a weekly reset for me. When Monday morning comes around, I feel confident in the week ahead. And as the week progresses, I check things off and I make tweaks when life pivots or priorities change. My word for 2025 is strategic. And although this was originally picked for my business, I am trying to be strategic in all aspects of my life, hence the Sunday reset. Taking the time to organize and plan the logistics of your life outside of work can eliminate those personal layers of overwhelm, which will allow you to be more present while at work and therefore likely more effective and efficient in your job. So we talked about overwhelm, the brain dump method, as well as the rule of three. However, I want to provide you with 5 more tangible practices you can try to implement in your workflow to reduce overwhelm at work. They might not all be right for you, but I challenge you to pick a few to try and see if it makes your shift run smoother. The first is plan your shift. This is something we've already mentioned, but I just want to make a second plug for it here. Starting your shift, crafting a tentative plan for the 12 hours ahead may make you feel more in control, which eases your anxiety. While you're planning your shift, lean into tools within the electronic health record system that you might be using at work, and this might give you a different view of the tasks ahead for your shift. If you use Epic, the Brain View is sort of what I'm referring to here, and it's a great feature that presents a consolidated view of a patient's important upcoming tasks. It's a great way to see required documentation that is due, upcoming medications due, procedures, and other important details all in one place. You can even view your entire patient assignment on this Epic view and really determine which hours you may be the busiest and which hours you might not have time sensitive tasks due. And by looking at this view in Epic, you may be able to figure out when is the best time for you to go for your lunch break, or when is the best time to complete tasks that are not time sensitive, like patient education or documentation. The second actionable practice might seem really silly and really simple and quite obvious, but I think it's actually very underutilized, yet absolutely brilliant. And that is the practice of charting while in the patient's room. I know you're probably thinking, well, yeah, obviously. But let me tell you the backstory. Recently, I was chatting with a few nurses on Zoom, and I meet weekly with a nurse entrepreneur group, and we were talking about how chaotic a shift can get and how hard it can be to multitask as a nurse. My friend Victor has been a nurse for 2 years and told me recently that he started charting at the actual bedside next to the patient. And for him, it's been life-changing. For those of you who don't know why this would be life-changing, I would say many nurses will go into a patient's room, complete their assessment, complete maybe an intervention or task or whatever it is they need to get done in the patient's room, and then leave the room to go back to the nurse's station to chart. Now, there's nothing wrong with this, but when we leave the patient's bedside, we are often approached by other patients or family or members of the healthcare team for things, for requests, for help, for updates, etc. If you chart at the bedside, you are charting in real time and finishing this task before leaving the room. When you walk out of the patient's room, you are done completely with your charting. No back charting or leaving the room with a chance of forgetting to chart completely. I also can tell you how many times I've left a patient's room to chart an assessment, and then halfway through my charting, I realize I can't remember what I heard in the lower lobe of the left lung, and I've had to go back into the patient's room and listen to their chest again. What a waste of time, and it's also slightly embarrassing. I have always utilized a computer outside of the patient's room to document. And when my friend Victor mentioned this simple change in his workflow that made his life easier and more efficient, I thought, wow, this is so brilliant. I also think that patients would perceive this action as you spending more time with them if you're charting in the room versus outside of the room. And well, that's because you actually are. My third tip for you is to cluster care when you enter the patient's room. This is something we hear all the time, but what does that mean? Cluster care means to plan to complete multiple tasks during one single patient interaction. A common example of clustered care is to perform a full head to toe assessment on our patients while passing morning meds during day shift. Take a moment to think, is there anything else I can do for my patient or on my to-do list when I go in to complete this other known task? Is it likely your patient will ask for a refill in their water? Can you anticipate a question or need that they may have and take the steps to complete it before going into the room or getting the information they want before going into their room? This may save you many steps and a lot of time. Tip number 4. Open lines of communication with your work peers early in your shift. I highly recommend connecting with your techs as soon as you finish receiving report from the off-going nurse. Give them a quick handoff and include tasks that you would like them to complete. Okay, get your delegation done. And these tasks might be blood sugars, ambulation trials, INO measurements, etc. This is also a great time to plan when to connect to work together in order to provide care to patients that are total care or need an additional set of hands. In this instance, plan to go into the patient's room together with a clear goal in mind. Like, let's meet at 10 a.m. in our patient's doorway and we're going to give the patient a bed bath, etc. I also recommend identifying a peer to act as a meal break buddy, someone that can cover your assignment while you take your break and vice versa. When you connect with them, also mention that what time you hope to go on break. This helps set the expectation for the day and sets a plan into motion. Your unit might have a good braking system, or if you're in California, I believe many facilities have a designated break nurse. But on the off chance this is not a system in place where you work or you don't work in California, try this method. Take matters into your own hands and identify a coworker that can cover your break early in your shift. Last tip number 5, is implementing the habit of mise en place. A really cool and unique practice to help you avoid overwhelm in the workplace setting is by practicing the French habit called mise en place. This refers to taking some time at the end of the day to set things up in advance for the next day so that you are ready to take action. What this would look like for bedside nurses would be to lay out your scrubs the night before or have a lunch packed, maybe have your coffee cup sitting in the coffee machine ready for your morning brew. Taking a few moments the night before a long day of work to lay a few things out can help us leave for work more efficiently the next day and often prevents that last minute scramble that often leaves us heading out the door late. Starting your work late or running late can easily ensue anxiety and frustration, and that can linger throughout the day, making you more susceptible to overwhelm. Okay, I would absolutely love to know if any of these tips work for you. As a quick recap, we've reviewed the 2 types of overwhelm, legitimate and lifestyle. Legitimate is caused by a season of life that we are in, and this type of overwhelm requires us to practice setting boundaries, self-care, and understanding the goal is to recharge in ways that can foster stamina, as this type of overwhelm is a marathon. Lifestyle overwhelm is situational, and this is the type that we experience at the bedside. We covered ways to tackle this type of bedside overwhelm with the following strategies: performing a quick brain dump, implementing the rule of 3, leaning into journal prompts like what can make my shift run smoother or easier. You may find keeping your work bag stocked and implementing a reset day weekly may be things to help you with both types of overwhelm. We also reviewed 5 additional tips to help you take control back of your shift and steer you away from overwhelm. These tips include planning your shift, charting at the patient's bedside, clustering your care to be more intentional with every patient interaction, opening lines of communication at the beginning of your shift with your coworkers in order to delegate tasks or plan tasks that may require extra set of hands, as well as plan for your breaks. And lastly, we discussed the power of the French practice known as mise en place to help you jump into action the next day. And don't forget to head to the show notes if you are interested in downloading the RN Shift Clarity tool to help you avoid overwhelm on the unit. Thank you so much for tuning in today. I truly hope these tips help you feel more in control and less overwhelmed. Remember, small changes can make a big difference, and you don't have to tackle everything at once. If you try out any of these strategies, I'd love to hear how they work for you. And don't forget, the Shift Clarity tool, as I mentioned, is in the show notes for you. Be sure to take care of yourself, and until next time, stay focused, stay intentional, and keep on keeping on. Well, that's it for today's episode of Life After Nursing School. I hope you feel more confident and ready to tackle the challenges that come with starting your nursing career. Remember, the first year or two might not be easy, but with the right mindset, you can overcome anything. If you found value in today's episode, I'd love for you to hit that subscribe button so you never miss a future episode. Also, please consider leaving a review on your favorite podcast platform. It helps so much in reaching other new nurses like you. Thanks for listening, and remember, you've got this. Take care and see you next time.